Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Before you drift off, I thought it would be a nice idea if you can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. It was a little past 8 p.m. when I pulled off at a rest stop somewhere in southern Utah, one of those small ones without a gas station, just a row of vending machines and some dim overhead lights buzzing above cracked pavement. I'd been driving since early morning, heading back to California after visiting my sister in Colorado. I was tired but didn't want to waste money on a motel, so I figured I'd nap in the car for an hour or two before pushing on. There were only 2 other cars in the lot. One parked by the bathroom building, the other way down by the last lamp post. I parked near the middle, away from both. Didn't really think much of it at the time. I got out, stretched my legs, grabbed a soda from the machine, and sat on the curb sipping it while checking my phone. No service. After maybe 10 minutes, I noticed this guy walking toward me from the direction of the far car. He had this stiff kind of walk, like his arms didn't swing naturally. Late 40s maybe. Gray beard, hoodie, jeans. Nothing really stood out except the way he kept looking at my car instead of at me. He stopped about 6 feet away and said, "Hey, mind if I take a picture of your license plate? Just for safety, you know. I like to keep a record of who's around." I didn't know what to say. I kind of laughed, assuming it was a weird joke, but he just stood there, holding up his phone. Not smiling. Not blinking. I said something like, why? He shrugged. "It's just a habit. Makes me feel safer." Then he walked around to the back of my car and took a photo before I could really respond. I was too surprised to do anything. He didn't ask again, just snapped it and walked back to his car without another word. I stood there for a few seconds trying to process how weird that was. I thought maybe he was paranoid or mentally off. Still, I didn't like it. I tossed my drink, got back in the car, and decided to leave. I figured I'd drive another 30 minutes and stop at a gas station or something more public. As I pulled onto the highway, I checked the rearview mirror. His headlights came on almost immediately, and a second later, he turned out of the rest stop and merged onto the same highway behind me. It was probably a coincidence. I told myself that. Same direction, nothing more. But he stayed behind me. At first just 2 or 3 car lengths. When I sped up, he sped up. When I switched lanes, he did too, always keeping the same distance. I kept looking for an exit with a populated gas station or a motel, but this stretch of road didn't have much. Just desert and empty frontage roads. I started changing lanes at random. Slowing down, speeding up. He matched every move. About 20 minutes in, I was white-knuckling the wheel, heart thumping. I turned off the highway onto a narrow exit just to test if he'd keep going straight. He didn't. He followed. That's when I knew. I tried calling 911 but still had no service. I remember feeling this weird, angry kind of panic. Like, this can't really be happening, right? This is something you hear about, not something that happens to you. The road curved and got darker, and I realized I'd taken some dead-end looking ranch road. No lights, no houses, just desert and scrub brush. I didn't want to lead this guy anywhere secluded, so I pulled a quick U-turn in the dirt shoulder and sped back the way I came. His headlights whipped around behind me a second later. Back on the main highway, I floored it. I pushed my old Civic way harder than I ever had, hitting 90, then 95. He stayed behind, maybe farther back now, but still visible. After a few more minutes, I saw a green sign for a town, some place I'd never heard of, but it had a Chevron logo next to the exit. I took it. I didn't even brake until I hit the ramp curve, tires squealing a bit. My hands were shaking. I spotted the gas station right away. It was lit up, had a few trucks parked out front, and a couple people fueling up. I pulled in fast, parked crooked near the front door, and ran inside. The cashier looked up, kind of startled, and I just blurted out, "There's a guy following me. Can I stay in here for a minute?" She nodded, eyes wide. I crouched by the little coffee machine, peeking out the window. Sure enough, his car rolled past the lot, slow. He didn't pull in, just kept driving by like he was checking who was inside. It was the same car from the rest stop. A dark blue Nissan with one headlight dimmer than the other. I hadn't gotten a good look at him earlier, but when he passed under the lights, I saw his face through the window. He wasn't looking at the road. He was staring at the station. He didn't come back around. I waited in there for over an hour. Eventually, the cashier offered to call the local sheriff, and I said yeah. A deputy showed up maybe 15 minutes later. I told him everything. He was nice about it, but I could tell he thought maybe I was exaggerating. He asked if I had any photos of the car or plate. I didn't. I hadn't even thought to get one. He offered to follow me to a motel just down the road. I took him up on it. I didn't sleep much that night, but I locked every lock and put a chair under the knob just in case. Next morning, I checked the lot before leaving. No blue Nissan. I made the rest of the drive in daylight, staying on main roads and only stopping at big truck stops. I still don't know what that guy wanted. I keep running it back in my head. Was he trying to scare me? Was he planning something worse? If I hadn't gone inside the gas station, if I pulled into another empty rest stop or side road, I don't want to think about what might have happened. I never saw him again. But now, any time I stop on a road trip, I park where people can see me. I don't nap in the car anymore. And I always make sure I have cell service before I get out. I was halfway through a solo road trip from Oregon to New Mexico, taking my time with back roads to avoid traffic. I'd been driving since early morning, and by the time I passed through this little town in northern Arizona, it was already dark. I hadn't planned where to stop that night, just figured I'd find a place when I got tired. It was one of those towns with one blinking traffic light, a gas station, a diner, and not much else. Right before the outskirts thinned out into desert again, I saw a glowing sign for a place called Sunrise Inn. Looked like it hadn't had any updates since the 80s. Just 10 or so rooms in a row, a busted ice machine out front, and a flickering neon vacancy sign. I was too tired to be picky. The office was this little booth with a window, and a guy in a stained tank top slid it open when I walked up. He didn't say much. Just took my cash, gave me a real metal key with a cracked plastic tag, and told me I was in room 6. I pulled my car right up in front of the room. The lot was mostly empty. One pickup at the far end, maybe 2 other cars. No one outside. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute, just trying to decompress. It was quiet, not even bugs buzzing. The kind of silence that feels like it's pressing in on you. The room smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. Carpet was sticky in spots. I didn't even bother with the shower. I locked the door, put my bag on the chair under the coat hooks, and collapsed on the bed with my shoes still on. The AC was a window unit that hummed unevenly, and the only light was a dull yellow one over the bathroom mirror. I must have passed out around 10. At first I thought the sound I heard was just part of a dream. That soft metal jiggling. I remember rolling over and half waking up. Then I heard it again, clear this time. Someone was trying to slide a key into the door. I froze. Didn't breathe. The key went in. rattled, then slowly turned. My first thought was that the front desk guy had mixed up rooms or given someone else the key. I sat up quietly and looked toward the door. There was only the bolt and the chain holding it shut now. I'd locked both before I fell asleep. Whoever was outside turned the key all the way. The handle moved. The door pushed inward a couple inches before the chain caught. Then silence. I crept off the bed and stood by the door without making a sound. I could see a sliver of the person through the gap, just the edge of their shoulder and part of a faded blue jacket. No knocking. No oops, wrong room. Nothing. They just stood there. Then the door pulled gently shut again. I backed away and grabbed my phone, but of course no signal. Just like the rest of this road trip. I waited, standing still, for what felt like forever. I finally worked up the nerve to go to the window and peek between the curtains. The person was walking away, toward the office. But they didn't go inside. They passed it. Kept walking toward the last room, room 10, and disappeared behind the corner. I didn't sleep after that. Just sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, bag still packed. I kept replaying it, thinking maybe it was a dumb mix-up. But I couldn't let go of how quiet they were. How slow. Most people would have knocked or said something. He didn't even try again once the chain caught. Just stood there. Around 4 a.m., I heard a knock. Not on my door, 2 doors down, I think. Then another. I cracked the curtain again and saw a different guy in the lot, walking door to door like he was looking for someone. His head was down, hoodie up, but he wasn't going to the office. He'd knock, wait a few seconds, then move to the next. There were only 3 other rooms with cars out front. I don't know if any of them answered. He didn't knock on mine. Not this time. Around 5 a.m., just as the sky was going gray, I decided I was done. I grabbed my stuff, opened the door, and scanned the lot. No one around. I kept my keys in hand and walked fast to the car. As I started it up, I noticed room 9's door was open. Just a crack. No lights inside. No sound. The curtains were drawn. I didn't stop. I didn't tell the office anything. I just drove. A few miles out of town, I finally got service and pulled over at a gas station. There was a sheriff's cruiser parked near the pumps, and I went inside to grab a coffee and calm down. I didn't even know how to explain it to the deputy. What was I going to say? Some guy tried to open my door and then just walked away. I didn't have a plate number, no clear face, nothing really solid. I just told the clerk at the counter the motel had been weird. She said I wasn't the first person to say that. I made it to Albuquerque later that day. Didn't take any back roads the rest of the trip. Didn't stop at any more roadside motels. From then on, I booked hotels in advance. Nothing under 3 stars. Nothing with keys that aren't cards. And if I can't park where I can see my door, I keep driving. The car died just past midnight, somewhere in western Texas. I'd been driving for hours through what felt like the middle of nowhere, no towns, no lights, just flat black fields and the occasional clump of trees. I wasn't sure why I'd last passed another car. The engine made a weird coughing noise and lost power so fast I barely managed to steer it onto the shoulder. When I tried the ignition again, it clicked a few times and then nothing. The dash light stayed on, but that was it. No signal either. Just one bar that wouldn't load anything. I sat there for a while, thinking maybe it'd magically fix itself. It didn't. I got out and popped the hood, not that I knew what I was looking for. It was dark except for the red glow of my hazards. The air smelled dry and a little metallic, like overheated dust. The nearest visible lights were tiny and far off across the fields, maybe some ranch house or gas flare in the distance. I tried calling a roadside assistance number anyway. The call dropped halfway through the menu. So I stood there, trying to decide whether to wait it out or walk somewhere. I didn't like the idea of leaving the car. I had a weird feeling about the stretch of road, like I'd accidentally pulled over into the edge of the world or something. I hadn't seen a sign in a while either. Just straight road in both directions. It was probably 40 minutes before I saw headlights again. I waved both arms. The car slowed, then stopped a few yards ahead of mine. Big white truck, newer looking, windows tinted too dark to see who was inside. The driver's door opened, and a man got out. He looked about mid-40s, jeans and a dark hoodie. White ball cap, the kind with a fishing logo on the front. His boots were dusty, and he walked slow, like he was taking his time. "You all right?" he asked, stopping a few feet from me. "Car won't start," I said. "I think the battery or maybe something overheated. It just cut out." He nodded and squinted into my open hood, but didn't come closer. "No lights on the dash?" he asked. "They came on, but it won't turn over." He scratched his chin. "Could be the starter, or maybe a fuse." "I got tools in the truck." That sounded good to me, so I stepped back and said, "Appreciate it." He didn't move. Just looked at me for a second too long. Then he said, "Actually, might be better if you hop in and we drive to the next town. It's about 20 minutes. I hesitated. "You don't think we could try jumping it first?" He shook his head. "If it's the starter, jump won't help. I could pull over too far and mess up my own truck trying to line up with you." I glanced at the road. It was wide enough for a semi to pull over with room to spare. "I think you've got space." He didn't answer right away. Just kind of tilted his head. "Look," he said, "it's late. You don't want to be out here. Hop in, we'll get you help quicker that way." I looked back at my car. I'd left the driver door open, hazards still blinking. My bag was in the passenger seat. I could feel my phone in my pocket, no signal, still. "I'd rather stay with the car," I said, trying to keep it neutral. He didn't like that. His jaw clenched a little, and he looked back at his truck. Then he looked down the road behind us. Then back at me. "I'm offering you a ride," he said, flat. "I appreciate it," I said, "but I'd rather wait for a tow." He stared at me. Didn't blink. Then muttered something under his breath and turned to walk back to his truck. I waited until he got in before backing toward my own driver door. I was about to get in when I noticed something weird. His brake lights didn't come on. No reverse lights either. He just sat there, parked, engine running. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I didn't want to look like I was freaking out, so I turned off my hazards and sat in the dark with the doors locked. He didn't leave. He just sat in his truck with the lights on, engine idling. I could barely see his outline in the driver's seat, but it looked like he was facing me. I started to feel trapped. I couldn't walk anywhere. I couldn't call anyone. I didn't know where I was. And now there was a guy parked just ahead, not leaving. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I quietly moved to the passenger seat and grabbed my flashlight from the glove box. I kept low as I did it, not turning it on. I had a tire iron under the seat, too. I slipped that next to me without making noise. I watched the rearview mirror. Still no movement. Then, without warning, he cut his lights. His truck went dark. Still running, but no headlights now. I couldn't see anything. I slid down in the seat until I was almost horizontal. My heart was pounding in my ears. I stayed like that for a while, gripping the tire iron, trying not to breathe too loud. Then I heard a door open. Not mine. His. Soft footsteps on the gravel. Then silence. I stayed down. After what felt like forever, I heard something lightly tap the back of my car. Once. Then twice. I froze. Then I heard the click of my rear passenger door handle. It didn't open. Thank God it was locked. But someone tried it. Then the driver's side. Also locked. He tried the front passenger next. Rattled it gently. Then nothing. I didn't hear him walk away. Just silence again. I stayed curled down in the footwell, phone in hand, no service, flashlight ready. Finally, maybe 5 or 6 minutes later, I heard his truck door slam. The engine revved slightly. Then I saw red taillights flick on. He pulled forward slowly, then turned around and drove back the way he came. I didn't move for a long time. Eventually I got out and checked. Sure enough, there were fresh boot prints in the dust around my car. He'd walked all the way around it. Tried every door. I stayed inside until morning. Right after sunrise, I finally got one bar again. Enough to call roadside assistance. They said a tow would take about an hour. I didn't care. I just waited. The driver who finally showed up was maybe the most normal guy I've ever met. Mid-30s, friendly, nothing off about him. I didn't say much. He looked at the car, told me the alternator was completely shot. Before he loaded it up, I asked if he could tow me to a town, any town. I didn't care where. I haven't driven that stretch of road since. I was heading from Phoenix to Denver, about a 13-hour drive. I'd done long road trips before, but never this stretch alone. It was late March, cool at night, nothing but desert and quiet highways for hours at a time. I left Phoenix around 2 p.m., hoping to get most of the drive done before midnight. I figured I'd stop somewhere near Santa Fe and sleep in the car for a bit if I needed to. Things were fine at first. Boring, but fine. I stopped for gas just past Flagstaff around 5:30, got back on the road without really thinking much about the other cars around me. But maybe 20 minutes later, I started noticing this silver SUV looked like an older Honda CR-V. It was behind me in the left lane for a while, then dropped back when I passed a truck, then got behind me again. I didn't think anything of it at first. Just another car on the highway. It was when I pulled off for a quick bathroom stop at a Love station near Holbrook that things started to feel weird. I pulled off, parked, and jogged into the store. When I came back out, I saw the silver SUV parked off to the side, facing my car. The guy in the driver's seat was just sitting there. Engine off, no one else inside. I didn't get a great look at him, just enough to tell he was wearing a dark jacket and a hat. Ball cap, I think. I remember thinking it was weird because there were open spots closer to the store, and he wasn't getting out. Just sitting there watching the front. I got in my car and left. When I merged back onto the highway, I kept an eye on my mirror. A few minutes later, sure enough, that same SUV came up the ramp and got onto the highway behind me. Same lane, same distance. I told myself I was being paranoid. It's a major highway, and there are only so many gas stations out there. People stop at the same places all the time. Still, I changed lanes a few times, watched him do the same. I slowed down a bit for no reason, just to see what would happen. He slowed too. Not right away, but not late either. like he was just trying to match me. I was fully creeped out now, but I didn't know what to do. There's nothing out there, just long empty stretches and truck stops every 100 miles. I didn't want to pull over again unless I had to. I figured I'd stop for food and gallop. There's a stretch near the freeway with a few fast food places all crammed together, right off the exit. I took the exit kind of suddenly, hoping the guy wouldn't follow. But a few seconds later, he turned off too. I saw him in the mirror. Same car. No mistake. I pulled into a Taco Bell. Line was short, so I figured I'd go through the drive-thru quick and get back on the road. I was reading the menu, window down, when I heard tires unravel behind me. I looked in my side mirror. The silver SUV had pulled in behind me. Same guy. Close enough that I couldn't back out if I needed to. He didn't order when I did. I could hear I was just a few feet ahead of the speaker when I stopped to wait. I even angled my side mirror a bit to catch his reflection. He didn't say anything into the mic. Just sat there. Now I was panicking a little. I didn't want to show it, though, so I took my food, drove out of the parking lot, and turned into a nearby gas station. I didn't need gas, but I figured I'd pull up to a pump and just wait to see what he did. I left the engine running and kept my phone in my lap. He didn't go anywhere. He pulled into the lot and parked across from the pumps, still inside his car. Lights off. Just watching me. I tried calling 911, but the signal was garbage. It rang, then dropped. I couldn't even load Google Maps anymore. I sat there trying to think. I didn't want to get out, but I didn't want to just sit and wait either. So I backed out and pulled out of the lot, taking a random side road into a neighborhood behind the shopping center. Lots of little residential streets with no lights. I made random turns left, right, another left, trying to lose him without making it obvious. I drove fast, but not enough to draw attention. I thought I was good. I didn't see him in the mirror for maybe a minute or two. But when I turned onto a wider road that looped back toward the highway, headlights showed up behind me again. Same color. Same shape. Same damn SUV. This time, he sped up. Not fast enough to tailgate, but close. He matched every turn I made. I passed a four-way stop, made a right without signaling, and watched him do the exact same. Now I was shaking. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I spotted a Circle K up ahead and pulled in fast, parking crooked across two spaces right by the doors. Bright lights, cameras, people inside. I jumped out and went inside holding my keys like a weapon. There was a guy at the counter, some teenager mopping, and two women grabbing drinks. I tried to act normal, but I kept glancing out the front windows. Sure enough, the silver SUV rolled slowly into the lot and parked along the side of the building, away from the main lights. I saw him in the driver's seat again. Just sitting. I walked over to the cashier and said, quietly, "Hey, I think someone's been following me for the last couple hours. Can I just hang out here for a minute?" He looked outside, then nodded and said, "Yeah. You want me to call someone?" I said yes, and he picked up the store phone and called local police. While he was on the phone, I stepped over by the drink coolers so I could peek around the corner and see the SUV without being obvious. The guy had gotten out. He was just standing by his car, looking in my direction. Not pacing, not going inside, not pretending to pump gas. Just standing perfectly still, staring toward the doors. No phone in his hand. Just standing there. The clerk got off the phone and said someone was on the way. I nodded and stayed where I was, trying not to freak out. The guy didn't move. About 5 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy pulled into the lot. As soon as the SUV saw him, the guy got back in and drove off. No rush, just casually pulled out and left like nothing was wrong. The deputy came inside and asked a few questions. I gave him the whole story, how I noticed the guy a few hours back, how he followed me into the drive-thru, how I tried to lose him and he kept showing up. He took notes, asked for a description, and said he'd check traffic cams and see if he could catch the plate. He offered to follow me back to the freeway and sit at the on-ramp until I was gone. I said yes. I didn't see the SUV again that night. I drove straight through to Denver. Didn't stop once, not even for gas. I barely made it. When I got to my friend's place, I slept for almost 12 hours. Nothing else happened. No one contacted me. No one found the guy. I don't know what he wanted, but he knew how to follow someone for hours without losing them. He knew how to keep distance just right. He knew how to wait. I don't drive long stretches alone anymore. I was about 8 hours into a solo road trip from Boise to San Diego. It wasn't my first time doing a long drive like that, but it was the first time I tried to push through most of it without stopping overnight. I had planned to find a rest stop or a quiet parking area to nap for a bit before the last stretch. I ended up pulling into this little turnout off a side road just past Tonopah, Nevada. I didn't want to sleep right off the main highway, and this spot was just remote enough to feel safe but not sketchy. It was one of those old picnic pullouts, cracked pavement, one wooden table, no lights, no buildings. Just a strip of gravel beside the desert. I figured I'd close my eyes for an hour, lock the doors, and get back on the road before it got too dark. I leaned the seat back, threw my jacket over my chest, and dozed off pretty fast. When I woke up, the sun was lower. Golden hour, maybe 6:30 p.m. I rubbed my face, stretched a bit, and went to start the car. That's when I noticed something weird. The steering felt off. Loose. Like the wheel shifted too easily when I turned it. At first, I thought maybe it was just because the ground was uneven. But then I stepped out to walk around the car, and that's when I saw it. All 4 tires were flat. Not just low, completely flat. Crushed under the weight of the car. I crouched down and ran my hand along the tread. There were clean slices across the sidewalls. Not blown, not worn. Cut. Like, deliberately. I stood there for a second, not really processing it. There weren't any other cars around. I hadn't heard anything. Nothing had passed by while I was asleep, at least that I remembered. I looked out toward the brush and empty road, expecting to maybe see a coyote or a person walking, but it was just quiet. Dead quiet. I pulled my phone out to call for help, but of course, no signal. Nothing. Just the emergency SOS icon and one red bar that didn't seem to do anything. It was getting colder, fast. The wind out there picks up in the evening, and I was still in jeans and a t-shirt. I grabbed my hoodie from the back seat and stood next to the car, trying to figure out what the hell to do. I had a tire repair kit, but that was useless with 4 slashed tires. No spare was going to fix that either. The last town I passed through was about 30 minutes back the way I came, and there wasn't much to it. One gas station, a diner, and a couple motels. I figured I'd have to start walking once it got dark enough to need headlights. I didn't want to draw attention if whoever did this was still around. I got back in the car, locked the doors again, and just sat there. I wasn't going to walk until I had to. That's when I noticed the dust on my driver's side window was smudged. It was subtle, like someone had leaned against it. I hadn't seen it before I went to sleep, but it was unmistakable now. The streaks curved slightly, like the shape of a palm. And below that, near the base of the window, there was a faint mark like a fingertip had dragged through the dirt and traced a line across the glass. I tried not to panic. Told myself it could have been there before. That maybe I leaned on it earlier and didn't realize. But I knew I didn't. I hadn't even touched that side of the car before the nap. I stayed locked in for maybe another hour. The sun dipped low enough that the sky started to turn purple, and I figured it was time to start walking. I packed up my stuff, phone, water, flashlight, and a tire iron and started heading down the road in the direction of that little town. I kept to the edge of the gravel shoulder, walking fast but quiet. I didn't want to be out there longer than I had to. About 10 minutes in, I heard an engine. At first I was relieved. I thought maybe I could wave someone down. But the sound was coming from behind me, and when I turned, I saw headlights. Not on the road, but further off, behind where I'd parked. It looked like someone had pulled off into the brush, maybe 100 yards out. The lights were pointed toward the road but angled slightly away, like whoever was out there didn't want to be seen directly. I dropped to a crouch behind some scrub and just watched. The engine idled for maybe a minute. Then the lights shut off. No door opened. No one got out. The vehicle, I couldn't tell what it was exactly. Maybe a truck or SUV, just sat there in the dark. I waited. 10 minutes, then 15. Nothing. Finally, I stood up and started walking again. Slower this time. Kept checking over my shoulder. After another 20 minutes, I made it to the edge of town, if you could call it that. Just a few lit up buildings and a small gas station. I went inside, found the clerk, and asked if they had a tow service or mechanic in town. He looked at me kind of funny when I explained what happened. He said there wasn't a mechanic in town, but there was a guy with a flatbed who could maybe come haul my car. He stepped into the back and made a call. While I waited, I went to the front window and looked out toward the highway. A truck rolled past. Older model Ford, dark green. Looked dusty, like it had been off-road. The thing that got me was that the headlights didn't come on until it was already past the station, like whoever was driving had kept them off until they were clear of town. Then they flicked on, and the truck sped up. Same direction I'd come from. The guy at the counter came back out and said the tow driver could head out in 30 minutes. I gave him a basic description of where I'd left my car and sat down by the coffee machine. I was still trying to figure out how someone had gotten close enough to slash all 4 of my tires without waking me. And why they didn't do anything else. Didn't break in, didn't take anything. It felt less like a robbery and more like someone was just watching. The tow driver showed up 40 minutes later. Old guy named Larry. Didn't say much, just nodded when I explained where the car was and let me ride with him out there. The whole drive back to the turnout, I was bracing for something. For my car to be gone. Or for that green truck to come barreling out of the dark. But when we got there, it was just my car. Still sitting in the same spot. Doors untouched, windows up. Tires flat. That was it. Larry hooked it up, didn't comment on the slashes, just muttered, "Happens more than you'd think," and hauled it back to town. I ended up staying the night at the little motel next to the gas station. I kept the curtain shut and the TV on all night, even though I didn't watch it. In the morning, I had a mechanic from the next town over come out and replace all 4 tires. Cost more than I want to admit. But I didn't care. I just wanted to be back on the road. I didn't sleep again until I got to San Diego. And I haven't pulled off into a turnout to nap since. I was somewhere in northern Utah, a little over halfway through a road trip from Portland to Denver. I'd been taking my time with it, stopping at little roadside diners and weird antique shops, just trying to enjoy not being at work. That morning I'd gotten on the road early, around 6, and by about 3 p.m. I needed gas and a bathroom, so I pulled into the station off the highway near a town called Roosevelt. The place was pretty empty, one other car at the pump, and nobody inside that I could see. It was one of those older stations where you still have to pay inside unless you're using credit, and the bathrooms were outside around the side of the building. I went in first to grab a water and a snack, and I saw the guy at the register was leaned back on a stool, reading a paper. He gave me a little nod, nothing weird. As I was grabbing a bottle of Gatorade, I noticed someone walking behind me. I didn't really look at him, just that instinct thing where you're aware of someone coming into your space. He didn't grab anything, just stood near the back of the store by the freezer. I went up to pay, and as the cashier rang me up, the guy came up behind me and stopped maybe 3 feet away. I remember that specifically, not right in line, just kind of hovering too close. I felt him looking at me, but I didn't turn around. The cashier handed me my change and I turned to leave, and that's when the guy said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I froze for a second. It was such a strange thing to hear. His tone was casual, not angry or accusing, more like someone joking around. But I didn't recognize him. At all. He was maybe mid-30s, kind of wiry, with dark hair that looked greasy and a bit too long in the back. He had on a gray jacket and jeans, nothing distinctive. But there was something about his face, his eyes were too wide, or maybe he just wasn't blinking. It made it hard to look at him for too long. I gave a polite laugh, the way you do when you think someone's mistaking you for someone else. I said, "Sorry, I think you've got the wrong person." He just smiled. Not big, just a small smile, like he knew something I didn't. Then he said, "Huh," and walked right past me and out the door. I stood there for a second, kind of waiting for him to turn around or say something else, but he didn't. Just kept walking across the lot, past the pumps, and into the dirt field behind the station. No car. No bike. Just walked off like he was headed somewhere, except there was nothing back there. Just sagebrush and power lines. The cashier looked up at me and said, "That guy bothering you?" I said, "No, not really. Just weird." The cashier nodded and went back to his paper like this kind of thing happened all the time. I walked around the side of the building to the bathrooms. They were locked, with one of those little keys on a hubcap hanging from a nail just outside the door. I took it and opened the men's room. It was gross, but not the worst I've seen on road trips. No window, one flickering overhead light, and a loud fan that kicked on when I turned the handle. I was in there maybe 2 minutes, tops. When I came back out, the key was gone. I figured someone else had taken it, so I walked around front again. The lot was empty. No other cars. No one at the pumps. The guy at the register was gone too, the stool was empty, and the little bell didn't ring when I opened the door again. I stood in the doorway for a second, trying to figure out if maybe he was in the back. I said hello, but no answer. The cooler hummed. The AC kicked on. Nothing else. I stepped in a little further, but I didn't really want to go snooping behind the counter or anything, so I just backed out and headed to my car. That's when I saw it. Someone had taken the air out of my back left tire. Not slashed, just slowly deflated. The cap was still off, sitting on the pavement next to it. I would have noticed if it was like that before. I'd walked right past it on the way in. I stared at it for a second, thinking maybe the valve was faulty or something, but it was just unscrewed. Like someone had done it while I was in the bathroom. I started looking around the lot again. Still no one. No movement. I walked to the other side of the building to check the field where the guy had gone, but there was nothing out there. No trail, no footprints, no fence, just flat dirt and low shrubs all the way to the horizon. I went back to my car, screwed the cap back on, and used the portable air pump I keep in the trunk. It took a few minutes, and I kept looking around while it inflated, just waiting for someone to pop out from behind the ice machine or the propane cages. No one did. When the tire was good, I got in and started driving. Didn't even bother with the GPS, I just wanted to get back on the highway and put distance between me and that place. I stopped at a bigger gas station about 40 minutes later. This one had lights, people, music playing from the pumps. I went inside to buy a coffee, just trying to calm myself down. I told myself it was probably just a weird drifter, maybe a guy I went to high school with who got me confused with someone else. Stuff happens. But then I pulled out my phone while I was sitting in the car, and I noticed a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail. Just one missed call, timestamp 3:19 p.m. That was about the time I was in the bathroom at the last station. Out of curiosity, I looked up the number. One of those reverse lookup sites. Nothing came up. No name, no location. I thought about calling it back, but something in my gut told me not to. I blocked the number instead. I drove straight to Denver after that. Didn't stop again except to pee once at a rest area with a dozen people around. No more weird guys, no more calls. But I still think about that moment when he said my name. I never wore anything with my name on it. I hadn't used a credit card. My plates are from Oregon, and my windows were tinted. There's no reason he should have known my name. But he did. I was driving cross-country last fall, going from Sacramento to my sister's place in Nashville. I'd done road trips before, but never one that long by myself. I planned it out over a week, stopping in smaller towns to avoid the bigger cities. I wanted to take my time, stay off the interstates when I could, just enjoy the drive. The first time I saw him, I was just outside of Ely, Nevada. 2-lane highway, flat scrubland for miles. Not a single car behind me or coming the other way. I remember it because I was about halfway through an old podcast episode, and I was getting tired of hearing the hosts ramble. I looked out at the horizon and saw this guy standing on the gravel shoulder, facing the road. He had this dark green jacket on, with the hood pulled up even though it wasn't cold. Gray pants, a big old hiking backpack with a bedroll strapped to the bottom. He was holding a cardboard sign, but I couldn't read it until I was already passing. I think it said East. He didn't look at me, just kept staring straight ahead. Not at the road exactly, more like past it. I didn't stop. I don't pick up hitchhikers. It's nothing personal, I just don't. I figured someone else would, or maybe he was a local. You see people like that out there sometimes, off-grid types who wander between towns. I kept driving, didn't think much of it after a few minutes. That part of Nevada is basically empty, so I figured I'd seen the last of him. A few hours later, I stopped for gas in a little town called Eureka. One main road, a gas station, and a diner that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. I got a sandwich and some water and sat in the car with the AC on low. That's when I saw him again. Same green jacket, same backpack. He was across the street, just standing in the shade next to a power pole, like he'd been there a while. No sign this time. Just standing there, facing the gas station. I remember looking around, trying to see if maybe there was a bus or something I didn't notice. But there wasn't. I hadn't passed him on the road I would have remembered. There hadn't even been a side road he could have taken. It was weird, but I didn't feel scared. just confused. Maybe he caught a ride and got dropped off ahead of me. I left pretty quick after that. Drove a bit faster than I had before, eyes on the rear view more than usual. The next day, I crossed into Utah. I took one of those smaller highways instead of I-15, winding through little towns and patches of forest. Beautiful drive, honestly. Quiet. I stopped in a town called Loa for lunch. Another one-road town with a gas station and a couple of diners. I picked a place that looked busy and grabbed a table by the window. I ordered, checked my texts, just kind of zoned out. When I looked up, I saw him again. Outside, across the street. Same clothes, same backpack. Standing in the exact same posture, not moving, not even shifting his weight. Just watching the diner. I dropped my fork. There was no way. No chance he could have gotten there before me unless he passed me somehow, but I'd have seen him. There weren't any other cars on that road. I watched him for maybe 2 full minutes. He didn't blink. Didn't twitch. Just stood there like a statue. When the waitress came back with my check, I asked if she knew him. Just said, "Hey, do you know that guy out there?" She looked. He was gone. Not walked off, just not there anymore. No open doors nearby, no corners to duck around. She shrugged and said, "Didn't see anyone." I didn't finish my food. Just paid and left. The rest of that day felt off. Like I was being watched. I kept glancing in the rear view, slowing down at intersections even when they were clear. There was nothing behind me, though. That night, I got a motel room in a bigger town called Richfield. Tried to distract myself, watched TV, ordered pizza, called my sister. I didn't tell her anything about the guy. I didn't even really know what to say. At around midnight, I heard a knock on the door. 3 quick knocks. Then silence. I froze. The peephole showed nothing. I didn't open it. Another knock, slower this time. I said, "Hello?" Nothing. I waited a full minute, then looked again. Still nothing. I didn't sleep much after that. I turned the light off and just sat by the window, watching the parking lot. No one came back. The next morning, I went to check out. I asked the guy at the front desk if they had cameras. He said yeah, they had one facing the front lot and another by the office entrance. Not near my room. I didn't ask to see it. I don't know why. I just didn't want to talk about it. By the time I hit Colorado, I was trying to tell myself it was just a coincidence. That I'd seen someone who looked similar. Maybe even twin brothers traveling separately, something like that. Then I stopped in this little mountain town, can't even remember the name now, for gas. It was cold enough up there that I put on a sweatshirt for the first time during the trip. The station was old, kind of run down, but open. No other cars there. I filled up, paid inside, and when I came out, he was standing across the street. Same jacket. Same pants. Same backpack. Same exact distance as before. Same posture. I didn't move. He was looking directly at me. Not past me, not through me, right at me. And this time, he smiled. It was small. Barely more than a twitch. But it was enough. I got in the car and left. Didn't bother with GPS, just drove toward the sun until I found the highway. I didn't see him again after that. I pushed through the last 2 days of the trip with as few stops as possible. I barely ate. I didn't sleep unless I was in a well-lit hotel with other cars around. Nothing else happened. but every now and then, usually when I'm parked, or filling up, or waiting in a quiet town somewhere, I get that feeling again. Like someone's watching me. And I can't help but check across the street. I was driving through New Mexico last summer, heading east toward Arkansas to see a friend I hadn't seen in years. I was taking my time with it, staying in small motels along the way and trying not to do more than 6 or 7 hours a day behind the wheel. It was the longest solo trip I'd ever done, and most of it had been nice, quiet highways, gas station coffee, just the road and my music. This happened somewhere between Clovis and Portales. I was a few hours into the drive that day, just after 5 in the evening. I remember that because the sun was starting to hang low, but it wasn't dark yet, just that golden late daylight. I'd pulled off the main road earlier to avoid a construction delay and ended up on some back roads, but my GPS was still guiding me fine. Not a lot of traffic out there, mostly flat fields and old buildings with boarded windows. I was at a red light on a 2-lane stretch coming into a town I don't think even had a name on the map. Just one of those intersections with a Dollar General, a shuttered gas station, and a couple houses scattered back from the road. No other cars around. Just me, idling there. That's when she came up to my window. She knocked lightly. I jumped a little, because I hadn't seen her walk up. She looked maybe late 20s, wearing a baggy sweatshirt and jeans. Her hair was messy, like she'd been running or outside for a long time. She looked sweaty, kind of panicked. I rolled the window down halfway. She leaned in a little and said, "Please, I need help. Can you let me in your car? Just drive me down the road. I don't feel safe." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. Not her tone, that part felt real. She definitely sounded scared, but the way she glanced over her shoulder. Not a quick look like someone checking for danger. It was more like she was making sure something was still where she left it. I didn't say yes or no right away. I just asked, "What's going on? What happened?" She looked back over her shoulder again. Same spot. Then turned to me and said, "Please, just unlock the door. I'll explain. I swear I'm not crazy, just please drive." I looked past her and scanned the area. And that's when I noticed something off in my side mirror. There was a man crouching behind my car. I couldn't see him directly, just the top of his head, barely sticking up above the trunk in the mirror. He was ducked down low, staying out of my line of sight unless I was looking just right. I didn't know what to do. My foot was still on the brake. The light hadn't changed yet. The girl was watching me, waiting, like she knew I'd seen something. Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped lower. "Please," she said. "Don't do anything sudden." That's exactly what someone says when something really bad is about to happen. I didn't respond. I just stared ahead like I was frozen. My pulse was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Then, in my peripheral, I saw the guy move. I didn't turn, I just barely shifted my eyes toward the side mirror again, and he was coming up the passenger side, keeping low, like he was about to open the door or try something. That snapped me out of it. The light was still red, but I didn't care. I floored it. My tires chirped on the pavement and I shot through the intersection, way too fast for that kind of road. I heard yelling behind me. I don't know if it was the woman or the guy, but I didn't look back. I kept going until I hit a main road again, then took the first right I could and pulled into the parking lot of a Family Dollar. I sat there, heart still racing, and locked the doors even though I was alone. I kept checking the mirrors. No one had followed. The road behind me was empty. I stayed there for maybe 10 minutes before I called the non-emergency police number. I didn't have a license plate or good description of either of them, not that I'd seen the guy's face at all, but I gave them the intersection and told them what happened. The woman on the phone said she'd send a car out to check. That was it. I didn't stick around. I kept driving and didn't stop again until I reached Roswell that night. Found a cheap hotel off the main strip and parked as close to the front office as I could. I didn't even get dinner. I thought about it a lot that night. The woman didn't look dangerous. She looked like she was being used. Or maybe she'd agreed to it, maybe she was part of the setup. Either way, they had a plan. He was supposed to grab me when I unlocked the door. That much felt obvious. And she knew I'd see him eventually. That's why she told me not to do anything sudden. She wasn't begging me to help her. She was warning him that I'd seen him. It was the calm way she said it. Like they'd done this before. What really freaks me out, what still sticks in my head when I'm at red lights now, is how easily it could have worked. If I hadn't checked the mirror. If I just felt bad enough for her and hit the unlock button. If he'd grabbed the door a second earlier. It was broad daylight. Middle of the day. Nobody else around. And I never even heard him. I was driving from northern Idaho to southern California last spring. The plan was to take my time, about 4 days total, stopping in motels and crashing wherever I felt like. I had just finished a long contract job up in Coeur d'Alene and didn't have to be anywhere for a while, so I figured I'd make it into a slow solo road trip, take back roads where I could, and avoid the I-5 mess until the very end. Most of the first day was uneventful. A few small towns, long stretches of pine forest and farmland, podcasts playing, window cracked. I stayed the night in a motel near Boise and got back on the road early the next morning, planning to push through to somewhere near Vegas. Around midday, somewhere in northern Nevada, I think just south of Winnemucca, I pulled off at a rest area. It was the kind with separate buildings for the men's and women's bathrooms and a couple vending machines. No gas station, no staff, just a quiet stretch of road and some faded picnic tables. The lot was empty except for one blue Toyota SUV parked near the entrance. I parked closer to the bathrooms and grabbed my backpack to brush my teeth and wash up. There was that weird dry desert wind that never seems to stop, just enough to make your ears ring. I remember the sun was sharp, like it was bouncing straight off the gravel and into your eyes. The kind of heat that makes everything look a little too bright. I went into the men's bathroom, and it was completely empty. Just 3 stalls, a urinal, and one of those old concrete sinks with the push-button faucets that barely trickle water. It smelled like bleach and dust, but it was cleaner than most gas stations. I took the far stall, mostly out of habit. Dropped my bag by my feet and sat down, just kind of zoning out. No sounds except the vent humming overhead. Maybe a minute or two passed. Then I heard the door open. Nothing weird about that public restrooms. Someone's always coming or going. I expected to hear footsteps go to the urinal or maybe the sink. But they didn't move. Whoever it was just stood near the entrance. I could see their shoes, tan work boots, not scuffed up but not brand new either. Just standing there. Not shifting weight, not turning, not walking. Just still. After maybe 15 seconds, they walked slowly past my stall. Didn't stop at the urinal. Didn't look in the mirror. Just paced past and then circled back. The sound of their boots echoed a little off the tiles, real slow and deliberate. Like they were thinking. Then they knocked. Not loud. Just a slow, single knock on my stall door. I kind of froze up for a second. I looked down and saw the other 2 stalls were open, no feet in either of them. This person had walked past 2 empty stalls and picked mine. I said, "Yeah, occupied." They didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood there. Another knock. Same as before. Just one. Now I was starting to feel weird about it. I leaned forward a little to look through the gap in the door. All I could see was the edge of a shirt, dark blue, maybe flannel, and part of a sleeve. They were standing really close. I cleared my throat and said, "There's other stalls open." Still nothing. Just silence. After maybe 10 more seconds, they walked away. I heard the boots move toward the sink, then nothing again. I sat there another minute, not sure what to do. I didn't hear the door open again, but maybe they left quietly. I waited until I couldn't hear anything, then stood up and got my bag. I opened the stall slow, peeking out. No one was there. I went to the sink, washed my hands, tried not to look around too much. Still didn't hear the door open or close. I figured maybe they'd left right after walking away. I tried my hands on my jeans and stepped outside into the blinding sun. The blue SUV was still in the lot. There was someone in the driver's seat now. I could only see part of him, just an arm resting on the wheel and the side of their face, turned away like they were watching the road. I walked quickly back to my car, keeping an eye on them. They didn't move. Didn't look at me. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. I sat there for a second, trying to decide if I should stay parked and wait for them to leave, or just pull out. Then I saw their head move. Not toward me, toward their rearview mirror. They adjusted it, pointed it directly at me. I pulled out. I got back on the highway going south, doing maybe 10 over the limit for a while, checking my mirrors every few seconds. For a bit I didn't see them. Nothing behind me. I told myself it was just a weird person, nothing to it. People are strange sometimes. But then, 10, maybe 15 minutes later, I saw the SUV. Same color, same shape. Couldn't see the plates yet, but it was gaining on me slowly, changing lanes here and there but keeping pace. I changed lanes, trying not to make it obvious I was watching them. They changed lanes, too. Always 3 or 4 car lengths behind. I took the next exit without signaling. Just a random small town turnoff, no services, just a road that led off toward the hills. They followed. At that point I knew. I kept driving until I found a gravel turnout near a bend, like a spot someone would use for scenic photos. I pulled over like I was just stopping to stretch my legs, killed the engine, and got out of the car. I didn't look back. I just popped my trunk and pretended to dig around for something. The SUV slowed as it came around the bend. I didn't turn, just kept my body angled toward the open trunk. The SUV didn't stop. It crawled past at maybe 10 miles an hour, the window half down. I saw the driver's face in my peripheral. Late 40s, shaved head, sunglasses. He stared at me the whole way past, like trying to memorize my face. Then he sped up and disappeared around the curve. I stayed there for 5 more minutes, pretending to check tire pressure, drinking some water, anything to make it look casual. Then I got back in and took a smaller road that looped back to the highway a few miles south. Didn't see him again. I didn't stop for the rest of that day. Not for food, not for gas until I absolutely had to. I made it to a motel in Tonopah around 9 p.m. and parked right under a streetlight in front of the office. The next morning I checked my car before getting in, made sure nothing was on it. No trackers or anything tucked by the license plate or under the bumper. I don't know what the guy wanted. I don't know if the woman in the stall thing was part of it, or if they were even working together. Maybe he just wanted to scare me. Or maybe it would have been worse if I'd opened that door. Either way, I don't stop at those remote rest areas anymore. I'll hold it. It was my second night on the road. I'd left Kansas City that morning, headed west toward Utah to see my brother. I was taking my time, just trying to clear my head after a breakup and a miserable couple months at work. I wasn't really in a rush. Just figured I'd drive until I was tired and find a place to sleep. That night I ended up at a little motel just outside of Limon, Colorado. One of those older ones right off the highway, with outside doors and the front office inside a separate little house next to the lot. I got there just before dark. There were maybe 6 other cars in the lot, all spaced out. No one hanging around outside. The clerk was some older guy who barely looked up from his phone. Gave me a room at the far end of the building, next to a vending machine that looked like it hadn't worked since the 90s. I didn't care. I just wanted a bed and a working lock. I brought in my bag, microwaved a gas station burrito, and laid down to watch something dumb on my tablet. Nothing weird happened that night. At least, not that I noticed. In the morning, I packed up early, like before 7, because I couldn't sleep much anyway. The room smelled like old carpet and cigarettes, and the mattress was thin enough to feel the box spring underneath. I carried my stuff out to the car, sipping a bottle of warm water, already thinking about getting a real breakfast in Colorado Springs. That's when I saw the note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper. Just a torn piece of notebook paper, folded once. No envelope. I pulled it off, thinking maybe it was a receipt or an old flyer. But it just said, in neat, plain handwriting, "I saw what you did." No punctuation. No signature. I stood there for a second, holding it. Then I looked around the lot. There was one guy loading a cooler into a pickup at the far end, but he didn't look over at me. Nobody else was out. At first, I thought maybe it was meant for someone else. A prank, maybe. Wrong car. But my car wasn't some generic sedan. It's a dark green '03 Civic with a cracked side mirror and a fading bumper sticker from my college. Hard to mistake for anyone else's. I turned slowly and scanned the motel windows. All of them had their curtains drawn. I shoved the note in my jacket pocket, got in the car, and pulled out of there fast. I kept glancing in the mirror for the next hour, half expecting someone to follow me, but no one did. Still, the note sat heavy in my mind. I went over every stop I'd made the day before: gas stations, a rest area, a drive-thru. I hadn't talked to anyone. Hadn't done anything even remotely weird. No accidents. No road rage. Nothing. I told myself it was just someone messing with me. Maybe bored. Maybe drunk. I tried to forget it. Around lunchtime, I stopped at a diner in a town called Fountain. Sat at the counter and ordered eggs and coffee, still trying to shake off the weird feeling. About 10 minutes in, this woman came in, maybe early 40s, dark ponytail, plain clothes, and took a booth across from me. I didn't think anything of it at first. But then I noticed she didn't order. She just sat there, staring out the window. When the waitress came over, the woman waved her off without looking. I tried not to stare. Just kept my eyes on my food. But a couple minutes later, I looked up again and she was staring right at me. Not like a glance. Just eyes locked, face totally still. I looked away, immediately. My stomach dropped. I finished my food in a hurry and paid in cash. When I walked out to my car, I looked behind me. She was still at the booth. Still staring. I got back on the highway, pushing 80. Didn't see her car, if she had one, anywhere behind me. By the time I reached Pueblo, I started to feel stupid. Maybe I just looked like someone she knew. Maybe she wasn't even looking at me. Could have been staring through me. Could have been zoning out. But then, at a gas station a couple hours later, it happened again. I pulled into this big travel stop just past Trinidad, one of those ones with multiple pumps, a subway, showers, the whole deal. Filled up, used the bathroom, grabbed a Gatorade and a granola bar. When I got back to my car, there was something under the driver's side wiper. Same paper. Same handwriting. I told you, I saw what you did. This time I felt something sink in my chest. Not fear exactly, not yet, just that crawling dread like when you realize something's really wrong, but you don't know what it is yet. I scanned the lot. I didn't see anyone watching me. I looked at the windows of the building, at the parked semis. Nothing stood out. I drove again. South toward Raton Pass. The mountain started to rise and the road got narrow. My heart was pounding, but I didn't know what to do. I wasn't gonna call the cops and say what. Someone wrote me a creepy note. I hadn't seen anyone actually do anything. I kept checking my mirrors, over and over. At one point I pulled off at a turnout and parked for 15 minutes, pretending to take photos of the mountains, just to see if anyone would stop. No one did. I kept driving. The sun was going down by the time I hit the New Mexico border. I didn't want to keep going in the dark, so I found another motel in a place called Springer. Smaller than the last one. Just 6 rooms, all in a row, and a tiny office. Looked more like someone's house than a business. I checked in. The guy running it seemed friendly enough. Told me to park right in front of my door. The lot was empty except for one other car, a red Chevy Malibu with tinted windows. I went inside, deadbolt locked, and just sat on the edge of the bed for a while. The room was dim. No TV. No Wi-Fi. Just a fan in the ceiling and a tiny desk. I kept checking the window, then the peephole. I left the light off. I didn't want to be visible. At some point I must have dozed off because I woke up to the sound of a car door slamming. I checked the clock, it was 11:42 p.m. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. The red Malibu was gone, but there was a new note. It was on my windshield again, same spot. I stayed frozen at the window for a while, watching. There was no one outside. No movement. Just my car under the one working parking lot light. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go out. I grabbed my keys and phone, left the door cracked, and walked fast. I didn't even look at the note until I was back inside. This one said, "I know where you're going." I packed up right then. Didn't even brush my teeth. I just tossed everything into my bag and got in the car. I drove straight through the night, past Las Vegas, into Arizona, through the empty desert with nothing around for hours. I didn't stop. Not once. I made it to my brother's place around 2 p.m. the next day, running on gas station coffee and nerves. He thought I was being paranoid when I told him. I couldn't blame him. But I still have those notes. All 3 of them. Crumpled but not thrown out. I never figured out who left them, or why. Nothing ever happened after that. But every time I take a road trip now, I check the wipers first thing. Every stop. Every time. It was late, probably just after midnight, when I noticed it. I was driving alone, cruising down this stretch of highway somewhere between Omaha and Denver. The kind of road that's mostly empty at night, long, straight, with nothing but cornfields on either side and maybe a few random farms if you're lucky. I had been on the road for hours already. Started the trip after work, just needed to get away from everything for a few days. My car was packed with the essentials, a duffel bag, snacks, and some playlists loaded on my phone. I remember feeling tired but still okay to drive, that vague buzz of being somewhere between sleepy and alert. The sky was clear, stars out, and the moon was bright enough to make the fields look ghostly in the dark. I was driving along, humming to a song, windows rolled down a bit because it was cool but not cold. I'd passed a couple of trucks earlier but nothing else on the road. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something weird at the back passenger door. Looked like it wasn't quite closed all the way. It wasn't open, but it definitely wasn't shut. I blinked and looked again. I was almost sure I'd locked and closed every door before I left my apartment a few hours ago. Hell, I even checked the doors when I stopped for gas about an hour back. The thought that a door was partially open on a highway in the middle of nowhere hit me like a cold splash of water. I pulled over at the next rest area without signaling. It was just a basic pull-off. No lights but a gravel lot and a couple of porta potties that looked like they'd been there since forever. My heart was already speeding up when I got out and went to the passenger side. The door was definitely ajar, just enough that I could fit my fingers between the frame and the door. I shut it firmly, tested the handle, and locked it. Then I walked around the car, double-checking every door. All the locks clicked tight. I stared at the door for a moment, trying to figure out how it could have opened. Maybe it wasn't fully latched before I left. Maybe I bumped it accidentally. But I was sure I'd locked it when I left my place. I don't know, sometimes I get distracted, but it didn't feel like that. I shrugged it off and got back in, locking the doors from the inside this time. When I started driving again, I felt a little uneasy but told myself I was overthinking. About 20 minutes later, I stopped again at a small gas station, the kind with one pump, a tiny building, and one old guy behind the counter who looked half asleep. I filled up, grabbed a soda, and stepped outside for a second. That's when I noticed something else weird. On the back of the car, stuck to the bumper, was this small piece of paper. Folded neatly in half, stuck there with what looked like clear tape. I peeled it off and unfolded it. It just said, "You left the door open." My hands were shaking a bit. No one was around. The gas station was empty except the guy inside who hadn't looked up. There were no cars nearby, no sign anyone had been close enough to stick that there without me noticing. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, turning that note over in my hands. Felt like someone was watching me, but I couldn't see anyone. I looked in all the mirrors a dozen times. I called my best friend, told her the situation, half joking, but her voice got serious fast. She told me to call the cops if anything else happened. I kept driving. The road curved through some hills, and the darkness felt thicker somehow, like it was pressing in. That's when I noticed the door again. Not the back passenger door this time, but the back driver's side. It was cracked open just like the other one had been, like someone had nudged it just enough to pop it loose. I slammed on the brakes and pulled over hard, heart thudding so loud it was like thunder in my ears. I got out, circling the car like I was expecting to see someone crouched behind it, but there was no one. No footprints in the dirt. No shadows. Just silence except for the night insects. I checked inside the car. Everything seemed untouched. My bag was on the floor behind the driver's seat, zipped tight. My phone and wallet were on the front seat. Nothing moved or missing. I started the car and locked the doors again, shaking slightly. My mind kept racing. Was someone following me? Had someone tried to get in when I stopped at that gas station? Was it the same person who left a note? Did they want to scare me, or worse? I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. The door latch might have been faulty. The tape and note might have been placed by a prankster or some random kid. But then the third weird thing happened. I stopped at a truck stop about an hour later, one of those big, 24/7 places with a restaurant, showers, and dozens of trucks lined up outside. I went inside to use the restroom and get a coffee. When I came back out, my car was exactly where I left it. Locked. Doors shut tight. But as I approached, I noticed something odd. The driver's side window was slightly fogged up, like someone had been breathing on it from the inside. I froze. I was the only one who'd been near the car, and I'd locked it before I went inside. I opened the door cautiously and looked inside. No one was there. No sign of anyone hiding. The fog on the glass slowly cleared. I stared at the seat and floor, looking for anything. Nothing. I got in and locked the doors again. That night, I barely slept. Kept jumping at every noise outside the motel room window. The room was above a small convenience store, and every few minutes a truck would rumble by, or a siren would wail somewhere far off. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a soft knock on the door. My heart stopped. I was sure I'd locked it. I stayed perfectly still for a minute, listening. No one knocked again. I checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. I didn't open the door. In the morning, I left as soon as I could. I drove nonstop back home, parking in my driveway just before dawn. When I got out, I checked the back doors one last time. They were both shut tight. I never found out who left a note or why they were messing with my car. But after that night, I made sure to always double-check every door before I drove off. Every single time. I was driving through this stretch of highway in the Midwest, nothing but flat fields and a few scattered towns. I was on a road trip, just me and my car, heading west with no real plan other than to get away from the city for a bit. I don't remember exactly how many hours I'd been on the road, but it was late afternoon when I spotted a little diner on the side of the road. It looked like one of those old-fashioned places you see in movies, the kind with a neon sign that flickers a bit and a parking lot that's mostly empty. I decided to stop for some food and a break. When I walked inside, the place was pretty quiet, only a couple of other customers scattered in booths, some truckers, and a middle-aged man sitting alone with his coffee. The waitress was an older woman, probably in her 50s, with short hair and a tired smile. She led me to a booth near the window. I glanced over the menu, ordered a burger and fries, and she took off to the kitchen. The diner smelled like grease and coffee, the kind of place where you expect the food to be simple but good. I looked out the window and watched a couple of cars pass by, nothing unusual. When the waitress came back with my food, she set it down and said, almost like it was a joke, "You already came in earlier today, didn't you?" I blinked, caught off guard. "No, this is my first time here," I said, laughing it off. She looked at me, then at the door like she was trying to remember something, but then she shrugged. "Ha, must be someone who looks a lot like you, then." I nodded and took a bite, but the comment stuck in my mind. Maybe I was just tired or distracted. It wasn't like I'd been there before, at least not that I could remember. I ate slowly, trying to ignore the little voice in my head. The waitress came back a few times, refilling my coffee and chatting with the other customers, but every time she glanced my way, I got this weird feeling like she was waiting for me to say something else. After I finished, I paid and headed back to my car. As I walked through the parking lot, I noticed the man who had been sitting alone inside was now standing by a pickup truck across the street, staring at me. His eyes didn't blink much, and he didn't look away when I caught his gaze. I felt a chill, but told myself it was nothing. I got in my car and started driving again, but after a few miles, I realized something else was off. The road I was on wasn't the one I thought I had taken. I glanced at my GPS, but the signal was weak and kept cutting out. I tried to call my friend to double check my route, but the call wouldn't connect. I stopped at another gas station a bit further down the road. Inside, the cashier didn't look up when I walked in. I grabbed a soda, paid, and headed back outside. As I approached my car, I noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. I unfolded it. It said, "You don't belong here." I looked around. No one in sight. I folded the note, got in my car, locked the doors, and kept driving. That night, at a motel, I kept seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. When I looked, there was nothing, just empty parking lots, silent streets. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I double-checked every door and window before I fell asleep. The next morning, I was out of there as fast as I could. I never went back to that diner, and I never found out why the waitress thought I had been there before or who left that note on my car. It was late afternoon when I rolled into this tiny town somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I'd been on the road for hours, driving across a couple states, mostly highways and back roads. I was on one of those road trips where you don't really have a plan, just grab your stuff and start driving west. This town was the kind of place you see on maps but never really think about. One main street, a handful of houses, a gas station, and a couple of closed-down shops. Not much going on, but I figured I'd stop for gas and maybe stretch my legs. I pulled into the gas station and filled up. The attendant was some older guy who barely looked up when I paid. The place smelled like stale coffee and dust. I grabbed a soda from the fridge, then headed back to my car. I remember noticing how quiet it was outside, no kids playing, no dogs barking, not even the usual hum of a nearby highway or the distant sound of a train. Just silence. I got back on the road, thinking maybe I could get through town quickly and back to the highway before it got too dark. I was tired, but nothing crazy. The road was a single lane each way, lined with trees that cast long shadows as the sun started sinking. A few miles down the road, I saw the flash of lights behind me. At first, I thought it was a patrol car pulling someone over. Normal, right? I eased off the gas, looked in my rearview mirror, and saw the lights again. But there was something weird about them. They weren't flashing in any pattern, not the way you'd expect. They just glowed, like the headlights were on but the siren and flashing lights weren't. I slowed down and pulled over on the shoulder, figuring the cop wanted to talk or whatever. The car behind me rolled to a stop maybe 15 feet back, and I glanced at it through my mirror. It was a police cruiser, definitely. White, blue stripe down the side, the kind you see everywhere. But there was no roof light bar, no decals on the door except the town name, and no emergency lights on the grille or bumper. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. I waited a few seconds, then slowly unlocked my door and cracked the window just enough to talk. That's when I saw the officer. He walked up, but his face was shadowed and his uniform looked off, like maybe it was a cheap imitation or something. No badge visible on his chest or hat, and his radio was missing. He didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me, silent. I swallowed hard. "Is there a problem, officer?" He didn't answer. Just reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flashlight, shining it into my eyes. It was a cheap flashlight, the kind you get at a gas station. Not a police-grade one. "License and registration," he finally said, voice low and flat. I fumbled for my wallet, handed him my license and registration through the window. He looked at them slowly, turning them over like he'd never seen an ID before. No questions, no explanation. Just silence. I kept glancing at him, trying to see his eyes, but the tint on his sunglasses and the shadow from his hat made it impossible. The whole time, I was trying to stay calm, but my heart was pounding. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I tried to ask again, am I being pulled over for something? Still nothing. After what felt like forever, he handed my stuff back without a word. I thought maybe he was done and I could drive off. But then he tapped on my window with his flashlight, like signaling me to stay put. "Wait here," he said, voice still cold and flat. He turned and walked back to his car but didn't get in. Instead, he stood by the passenger side, watching me. I sat still, locked the doors, feeling more and more uneasy. I tried to call 911, but my phone showed no signal. I tried again and again, no luck. The sun was dipping lower, and the shadows grew longer. I noticed something else. The car behind me, the cruiser, had no license plate. Not on the front or the back. I tried to look for anyone else nearby, but the road was empty. No other cars, no pedestrians. Nothing. After a few minutes, the man started walking back toward me. "Can I see inside your car?" he asked, like it was normal. I shook my head. "No." "What's going on? You haven't told me why you pulled me over." He didn't respond. Instead, he pressed his face close to my window, staring in. His eyes were dark, but I could tell they were watching me like I was some animal trapped in a cage. His breath fogged up the glass. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight. I looked around, trying to find any way out of this. But the road was empty in both directions, just trees and darkness waving past the last streetlights. I told him again, "I want to leave. Please just tell me what this is about." He smiled then. Not a friendly smile, more like the kind you give when you're bored and want to see what someone will do next. "Not yet," he said. I was frozen. I realized then I had no clue if this guy was really a cop. He wasn't acting like one. He had no badge, no ID, no siren, and he wasn't following any rules. I tried to keep calm and keep my doors locked. I slowly reached for my phone again, hoping maybe the signal came back. Nothing. I remembered a trick a friend once told me about fake cops. If they don't have a marked cruiser with lights or won't show ID, you can drive to the nearest busy place or call 911 to verify. So I told the guy, "I'm going to drive to the next gas station." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "No. Stay." That's when I noticed movement in the trees across the road. A figure standing just beyond the streetlight's glow, watching us. I squinted but couldn't see who it was. Then it disappeared. I looked back at the man in the cruiser. His eyes were sharp now, like he knew I saw something. "Don't play games," he said. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I thought about my options, but there weren't many. I had no phone signal, a suspicious guy blocking my way, and no one else around for miles. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm going to drive. If you want to follow me, go ahead. But I'm not staying here." He didn't move, just watched me. I unlocked my door, started the car, and floored it. He jumped back in the cruiser and sped after me. The headlights behind me flashed on for a second, but still no siren. I took every turn I could, trying to get back to a busier road. The cruiser stayed on me, but I kept my speed steady and didn't panic. After about 10 minutes, I saw a gas station up ahead with a bunch of cars and trucks. I pulled in as fast as I could, and the cruiser slowed, then stopped at the entrance. The man got out, but when he saw the crowd, he hesitated, looked around, then got back in and peeled away. I didn't stop driving until I was well out of that area, my hands shaking on the wheel. I never saw that cruiser or that man again. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I'm glad I didn't stick around to find out. It was one of those nights where I was driving through a long stretch of highway with nothing but darkness on either side, just trees and fields and the occasional abandoned farmhouse. I'd been on the road for hours, heading back home after a weekend visiting some friends. The radio was mostly static, and the air in the car was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and fast food. I was tired but still alert, the kind of tired where your brain feels fuzzy but your body knows it's not safe to nod off. The highway was almost empty. I could see a couple of headlights way off in the distance, but for the most part, I had the road to myself. That kind of silence on a highway is weird. It's not the peaceful kind, more like the quiet you notice because there's nothing else to distract you. I kept checking my mirrors every now and then, but nothing was behind me except the empty road. Then, out of nowhere, a big pickup truck pulled up beside me on the left lane. I barely noticed it at first because it was dark and the truck was mostly shadowed. Then the driver flashed their high beams twice, then 3 times in quick succession. It startled me enough to jerk my eyes toward the window. The truck's headlights were bright as hell, and the driver was staring straight at me. I caught a glimpse of a face, dark hair, maybe early 30s, a rough-looking guy with a grim expression. I looked away fast, figuring it was just some asshole trying to mess with me. That kind of thing happens on long drives, people flashing their lights to annoy or scare. I kept driving, ignoring them. But the truck stayed there, matching my speed, flashing the high beams again. Not just once or twice, but a quick, steady rhythm. It wasn't random or accidental. It was deliberate, like he was trying to get my attention for something urgent. I slowed down a bit, hoping he'd pass me, but he didn't. Instead, he pulled up even closer and rolled down the window, yelling something, but I couldn't hear over the engine and my own windows. I rolled down my window a crack and asked, "What's up?" He shouted, "There's someone in your trunk. Open up." My heart skipped. I looked at my rearview mirror and even glanced out the back window. The trunk was closed tight, no sign of anything or anyone. I thought maybe he was messing with me or drunk, but the panic in his voice was real. "Are you serious?" I said. "Why would someone be in my trunk?" He kept flashing the eye beams, trying to get me to pull over. I pulled off to the shoulder, heart racing, and stopped the car. The truck stopped a few feet behind me. The guy got out, walking up fast, his face tense, sweating even though it wasn't hot. "Open it," he said, voice low. I shook my head. "No way, man. What's going on?" He looked around like he expected someone to jump out of the woods or something, then said, "Look, just open it, okay?" I saw someone crawl in there at the last rest stop. "I was behind you." My hands started shaking. I tried to tell myself this was a prank or a mistake, but the guy didn't look like he was joking. "Okay," I said, reaching for the trunk release button, "but if this is some kind of joke." The truck driver cut me off. "It's not. I swear." I pressed the button, the trunk popped open, and I stared inside. Nothing. Just the usual spare tire, a blanket, a bag of tools. I closed the trunk, heart pounding harder than ever. There's no one in there. He looked frustrated, like he didn't know what else to do. Then, he pointed toward the back seat. I glanced over. The back seat door on the passenger side was slightly ajar. I was sure I'd closed it before leaving the rest stop. "Your door's open," he said, stepping closer. I'd been so focused on the trunk, I hadn't noticed. My hands went cold. I reached over, yanked the door shut, and locked it. He nodded and said, "You're lucky." Whoever got in was probably looking to hide. I swallowed hard. Why didn't I hear anything? He shrugged. Could be they're good at staying quiet, or maybe they weren't in your car long. the weirdest thing was the silence. Before he showed up, I felt like someone was watching me the whole time. Like the road wasn't just empty, it was waiting. The truck driver gave me a look and said, "I'm going to call the cops. Stay right here." I nodded, though honestly, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I locked the doors again, checked every window, and sat tense as he pulled out his phone. It wasn't long before blue and red lights appeared behind us. The cops were polite but serious. They checked my trunk and the car thoroughly. No one was there. They asked if I wanted to come down to the station, but I said no. I just wanted to get home. The truck driver thanked me before leaving. I never caught his name. After that, I kept thinking about how close it all felt. Like someone had been right there, just waiting for me to let my guard down. I don't know if I would have noticed if that guy hadn't come along flashing his lights. I got back on the highway and drove faster than I ever had before, never looking back. It started out like any other long drive, just me, my car, and the open road. I was on a solo trip, heading back from a friend's wedding a few states over. Nothing special, really. I'd left early in the morning, figured I'd make decent time and maybe stop somewhere for dinner before crashing in my apartment. I wasn't in any rush, just driving with music low and windows cracked a bit, trying to keep myself awake. A few hours in, I stopped at a rest area to stretch. It was late afternoon, sun was getting low but still plenty of daylight. The rest stop wasn't busy, just a couple of trucks parked, some faded picnic tables, and a bathroom that smelled like cheap disinfectant. I got out, walked around, grabbed a soda from the vending machine, and then went back to my car. That's when I noticed something weird. My phone was on airplane mode. The little icon was right there, in the top bar, clear as day. I definitely didn't put it on airplane mode. I mean, I use my phone all the time for navigation, music, and checking messages on the road. I'd been using it a minute ago to check how far I had left to drive before the next gas station. So how the hell did it switch on its own? I tapped at the screen, toggled airplane mode off, checked the signal, full bars. I figured maybe it was some weird glitch or an accidental pocket tap. Shrugged it off and started driving again. About 20 minutes later, I pulled over for gas at a tiny station in the middle of nowhere. The place looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s, faded signs, one pump that looked barely functional, and a little convenience store with flickering fluorescent lights. The cashier was an older woman who barely acknowledged me when I walked in. She was sitting behind the counter knitting something that looked like a scarf or maybe a sweater. I got some snacks, paid, and as I was heading out, I glanced at my phone again. Once more, it was in airplane mode. I swear I hadn't touched it since the last time I turned it off. I flipped the switch back, thinking maybe the phone had a weird bug or something. The signal came back. I got back in the car, still feeling a little uneasy. It wasn't a big deal, but it bugged me. The feeling like someone was messing with me or something was off in the air. I hit the road again, but I kept looking in the rearview mirror more than usual. Nothing unusual showed up at first, just the empty highway behind me, dust kicked up by some distant cars, and the occasional flashing taillights. But the longer I drove, the more I caught the sense that something wasn't right. Around dusk, I stopped at a small roadside diner to grab some food. It was one of those old-school places with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. There were only a few other customers, and the waitress was this middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Linda. While I waited for my food, I pulled out my phone to text my sister, just to say I was on track and would be home by late evening. That's when I saw it again. Airplane mode. On. And the weird thing? The toggle wasn't just on, it was locked. Like I couldn't change it. The switch was grayed out. I tried restarting the phone, hoping it was a software glitch, but after rebooting, airplane mode was still enabled and locked on. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it off. No calls, no texts, no GPS. I sat there in the diner booth, staring at the screen, heart starting to pound a little. Linda came by with my food and noticed me fiddling with the phone. "Trouble with your signal?" she asked, voice low and casual. "Yeah, something weird's going on. Airplane mode's on, and I can't turn it off." She nodded like she understood, but said nothing else. "The cell towers around here can be spotty," she said. "Sometimes phones act funny." Then she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You headed far?" "Just a few more hours back home," I said. She leaned a little closer, as if sharing a secret. "Be careful. This stretch, people don't always travel alone for good reasons." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, I guess." She went back to the kitchen, and I kept eating, but the uneasy feeling settled deeper. I couldn't explain why, but something about that interaction made my skin crawl. After dinner, I paid and got back on the highway. The sky was almost dark now, the kind of night where shadows seem to stretch too long, and the streetlights flicker like they might go out any second. I put the phone away since it was useless for now, and focused on driving. About 30 minutes later, I noticed headlights in the distance, growing closer. I figured it was just another car catching up to me, nothing out of the ordinary. But as it came closer, I realized it was following way too closely, matching my speed exactly, never passing, never falling back. The highway was mostly empty, just me and this other car. I tried speeding up a little, then slowed down, but the car stayed glued behind me like it was watching every move. The headlights were bright, and I caught brief glimpses of the driver, too dark to see much, but definitely a man, maybe mid-40s, with a baseball cap pulled low over his face. The road had a few turns coming up, and I took them cautiously, glancing in the mirror. The car behind followed perfectly, never once losing me. My stomach tightened. I wanted to shake him, but the roads were narrow, and the few places to pull over were dark and isolated. I thought about stopping at the next gas station or convenience store, but the next exit was miles away. After a few more minutes, I reached a small town with a blinking neon sign for a 24-hour convenience store. I pulled in quickly, and the car behind did the same, parking a few spots down. I sat there for a second, trying to steady my breathing. The other driver stayed in his car, windows up, engine running. I wanted to get out, maybe go inside and get help, but something kept me frozen. I locked my doors, grabbed my jacket, and finally decided to step inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the store smelled like stale coffee and cleaning chemicals. The cashier was a young guy, maybe late teens, and he glanced at me like I looked like a mess. I bought a bottle of water and asked if the police station was nearby. He pointed to the end of the street but said it was closed for the night. I stepped outside, water in hand, and glanced at the car again. The man was sitting motionless, staring straight ahead. The street was quiet except for the hum of a distant generator. I went back to my car, trying to act casual. When I got in, the man's car started up and pulled out slowly, driving away down the street. Relief hit me like a wave, but I stayed on edge. I waited a minute, then pulled out too, sticking to the main roads. The rest of the drive was nerve-wracking. I kept my doors locked, windows mostly up, eyes glued to the rearview mirror. No more cars followed me after that. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the sun was just starting to rise. I unlocked my front door with shaky hands and went inside. Later, when I looked back at my phone, I found out something even stranger. The airplane mode thing wasn't random. Someone had installed a remote profile on my device, a mobile device management setting that locked airplane mode on. It was meant for corporate phones or kids' devices, not mine. Whoever did it could have tracked me, controlled my phone, and cut me off from help. I changed every password, wiped the phone, got a new SIM card. But I never figured out who did it or why. All I know is that for those hours on the road, I was completely cut off, trapped with someone watching me, waiting for the right moment. And that's a place I don't want to be again. I was on this road trip, just trying to get home after a long weekend visiting my sister. I left late in the afternoon, thinking I'd take the usual highway route, but my GPS kept giving me some weird detours. The traffic was backed up from a wreck or something, and after a while, the GPS finally rerouted me off the main road and onto some smaller back roads. I didn't think much of it at first, just figured it was trying to save time. So, I followed the directions, turning off onto a narrow dirt road that cut through a thick patch of trees. The sun was starting to set, and the sky was turning this dull orange. The road wasn't well maintained, potholes, loose gravel, and trees hanging low over the edges. I kept an eye on the GPS, which kept recalculating as I went deeper into this unfamiliar area. After a few miles, I realized something was off. There weren't any houses, signs, or any signs of civilization at all. Just the forest on both sides. The road got narrower and bumpier. My car was kicking up dust. I thought about turning around, but the GPS said to keep going. I checked my phone, no signal. Great. That's when I saw the first unsettling thing, a second car parked just ahead, blocking the road. It was one of those old SUVs, the kind that looked like it belonged to someone who spent a lot of time off-roading. The driver's side door was open a crack, but no one was visible inside or around it. The engine wasn't running. I slowed down and stopped a few feet away. I tried to see if maybe the driver had gotten out to fix something, but the area was dead silent except for the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. No footsteps, no voices. I called out softly, "Hello? Everything okay?" Nothing. The only reply was a crow cawing somewhere in the trees. I checked behind me to see if I could just backtrack. The way I'd come was just a thin strip of dirt road disappearing into the forest. I glanced again at my GPS. It still wanted me to keep going forward. I felt stuck. I debated just driving around the SUV, but the road was too narrow and muddy in spots. My tires slipped a bit when I tried inching closer. I rolled down my window and called out again, louder this time. Still no answer. Then, a car door slammed somewhere deeper in the trees, maybe 100 yards away. I jerked my head toward the noise. Nothing moved in the shadows, no light, no movement. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to stay in the car. I locked the doors and tried calling my sister, but the phone was dead, no signal at all. I switched it off and on, but nothing. The sun dipped lower, and the forest around me started to look more oppressive. Shadows stretched long and thick, and the silence was so heavy I could almost hear my heartbeat in the quiet. After what felt like forever, a figure emerged from the tree line. He wasn't walking fast, just slow and deliberate. He wore a dark hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His hands were in his pockets. I swallowed hard and locked my eyes on the rearview mirror, watching him approach the SUV first, then glance toward my car. When he looked my way, I saw his eyes for a moment, dark, cold, unreadable. I didn't move. He stood there a few feet from the SUV, looked around like he was waiting for something or someone, then started walking toward my car. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight. I debated starting the engine and backing up, but I didn't want to risk getting stuck on this dirt road with no idea where to go. He stopped right beside my window and looked inside, his face still mostly hidden by the cab's shadow. Then, he leaned in and tapped the glass lightly. "Hey," he said, voice low but steady. "You lost?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He smiled, just a slight upturn of the lips, but it didn't feel friendly. "GPS messing with you?" he asked. "That thing's been rerouting everyone weird tonight." I didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flashlight, clicking it on and off a couple of times. The beam was weak but enough to catch the dust floating in the air and his grim expression. "I wouldn't keep going down that road," he said. "It's a dead end." I glanced back at the GPS screen. Sure enough, it was still telling me to keep driving straight, but the map showed nothing beyond a patch of forest. "Why would it send me here, then?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "I don't know. Sometimes those things don't make sense. You're better off turning back." I looked around. The dirt road behind me was overgrown, but I thought I could make it if I went slow. He nodded toward the back road, then back at the SUV. "I'll move the car so you can get out. But don't stop or slow down too much. There's folks out here who don't like company." I swallowed again and nodded. He got into the driver's seat of the SUV and started the engine. The rumble echoed between the trees. He backed up slowly, giving me just enough space to pull around. I waited until he was fully clear, then I eased the car backward onto the main dirt path. The moment I was past the SUV, I hit the gas and started driving. The road was rough, and my car bounced around, but I kept my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. For a while, the man stayed standing at the side of the road, watching me go. Then he disappeared back into the trees. I drove for what felt like hours, trying to find a gas station or any sign of a town. The GPS finally kicked back in when I reached a paved road, but my hands were shaking too much to focus on it. When I got to a small highway rest stop, I parked and called my sister. I told her what happened and waited until she could come pick me up. Even now, I think about that guy in the dark hoodie, standing there in the middle of nowhere, like he was waiting for someone. The way the GPS rerouted me, the SUV blocking the only way back, and how quiet everything got, all of it felt like more than just a coincidence. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. It was one of those late summer road trips where you don't really have a plan, just a vague idea of where you want to end up. I'd been driving all day, trying to get away from the city and clear my head. I stopped at a small motel just off the highway around midnight because I was tired and figured I'd crash for a few hours before hitting the road again. I checked in using a fake name, something dumb like Mike Larson, because I didn't want my real name floating around on a reservation. The clerk didn't even blink, handed me the key, and that was that. I didn't think much about it. The room was nothing special, just a standard single room with one bed, a small bathroom, and a window facing the parking lot. It was quiet at first. The air smelled faintly of old carpet and cleaner. I took a shower, laid down, and tried to sleep. Around 1:30 a.m., the phone rang. It was loud and jarring in the silence of the room. I groaned, grabbed the receiver, and said, "Hello?" A woman's voice, kind of breathy and tired, asked, "Is this my real name?" I froze for a second. That wasn't the name I'd given. I cleared my throat and said, "No, you must have the wrong number." There was a pause, then she said, "Are you sure? Someone said you'd be here tonight." I hung up and stared at the phone for a minute, heart pounding. Maybe she dialed the wrong room by mistake. The phone didn't ring again for a while, so I tried to settle back into bed. But my mind wouldn't quiet down. After what felt like half an hour, it rang again. I didn't want to answer, but I felt like I had to. Hello? The same voice, a little more urgent this time. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important. I said, "You've got the wrong number," and hung up again, my hand shaking. I looked out the window into the dark parking lot. The lot was nearly empty, except for a couple of cars parked far away near the office. No one was around. I didn't hear any footsteps or voices outside. No one knocking on the door. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioner. I debated calling the front desk, but didn't want to explain why. What if it was someone messing with me, or worse? The phone stayed silent for about 20 minutes, and I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. It rang again, louder than before, making me jump. I picked up and said flatly, "Look, I don't know who you're trying to reach, but I'm not that person." The voice cracked a little. "It's me, please. I'm scared." That sent a chill down my spine. I asked, "Who's this?" No answer. Just heavy breathing, then the line went dead. I stared at the receiver for a long time, heart hammering. I wanted to call the police, but didn't know what to say. Some stranger calling my room, claiming to know me, but I was under an alias. I got up and locked the door, checked the windows, and made sure the deadbolt was on. The room felt smaller. The shadows in the corners thicker. The hum of the air conditioner somehow louder. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone on the nightstand, waiting. After about an hour, it rang again. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to get it over with. "Hello? Please." "I'm outside," the voice whispered. I froze. "Outside where?" I looked at the window but couldn't see anything in the dark. I told the voice to leave me alone and hung up. I sat there for what felt like hours, phone beside me, listening for any sounds outside. Around 4 a.m., I finally heard footsteps approaching the door. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath, not moving. The footsteps stopped just outside. There was a faint scraping sound, like someone trying to turn the doorknob. I didn't know if the door was locked. I gripped my phone tightly, ready to call 911. After a minute, the footsteps moved away. I stayed up until dawn, watching the window, listening for anything. When the sun finally started to come up, I packed my things quickly and checked out. I told the clerk I needed to leave early, gave no explanation. Driving away, I kept checking my mirrors, wondering if anyone was following. I never found out who was calling or why they knew my real name. But I didn't stop driving until I was back in the city, safe and far away from that empty motel and those late-night calls. I don't even know how I noticed it at first. I was just pulling over at this overlook I'd found by chance on my road trip, wanting to stretch my legs and take a quick break. It was late afternoon, the kind of light that's soft and golden, and the view was pretty great: rolling hills, trees, a river winding through the valley. Perfect place to just stand for a bit and breathe. I parked my car right near the edge of the turnout, locked the doors, and stepped out. The air was warm but not hot, and the breeze rustled the leaves overhead. I pulled my phone out to snap a few pictures of the view, nothing fancy, just something to remember the trip by. When I looked up after that, I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a weird shadow or a trick of the light, but no, a figure was standing barely 50 feet into the trees, partially hidden behind some thick bushes. He was holding something up. I couldn't tell exactly what at first, but then I saw the flash of a lens. A camera. I blinked, convinced I was imagining it. Maybe someone else pulled over here too. but the spot was pretty isolated, and I hadn't seen another car around. I felt my pulse pick up a little, but I told myself not to be paranoid. Maybe this guy was a photographer who liked the view as much as I did. So, I stepped closer to my car, keeping my eyes on the figure. The man stayed still, just watching the car. I caught a glimpse of his face, middle-aged, scruffy beard, wearing a hoodie even though it was warm. The camera was an older model, like one of those DSLR things, not a phone. He didn't move or lower the camera, just kept taking pictures. That's when I noticed something else weird, the angle of the photos. They weren't pointed at the overlook or the valley. They were all focused on my car. Like, every shot was framed to get the license plate, the windows, maybe even inside the car. I swallowed hard and stepped back toward my driver's side door. I unlocked it with my key fob, fingers trembling a little. The guy didn't say a word. He just disappeared slowly into the trees without looking back, like he knew I'd seen him and didn't want a confrontation. My heart was pounding by then. I got inside and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, the engine running, trying to calm down. But the feeling didn't go away. I started the car and drove a little further down the road, keeping my eyes on the tree line. No sign of him. No other cars. I pulled over again at the next turnout, a small gravel spot without much of a view, just a place to stop. I took out my phone and looked at the pictures I'd taken earlier, trying to distract myself. Then I checked the rearview mirror and caught something in the distance, headlights. A car was coming down the road behind me. It was far away, but it seemed like it was slowing down. I locked the doors again and sat still, watching. The car passed without stopping. I felt a little better, but not much. I started driving again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The road was narrow and twisting, with trees lining both sides. No cell service, I'd already checked. I told myself I was overreacting. I stopped at a gas station when I finally got to a town, filled up, and used the restroom. When I came back out, a man was leaning against a wall by the pumps. He was the same guy, same hoodie, same scruffy beard. He looked up at me, gave a little nod, but didn't say anything. I felt like running. Instead, I got in my car, locked the doors, and started driving. He didn't follow. I took the next highway exit and didn't stop until I was back in a place with lots of people and cell service. I deleted the photos I'd taken at the overlook, even though I thought they might help explain what was happening. I never saw that guy again. I don't know why he was taking pictures of my car or how long he'd been watching me before I noticed. I guess I'll never know. I was on the road by myself, doing one of those last-minute road trips where you don't really have a plan, just kind of driving until the gas runs low or you get tired. I left early that morning, rolled through a couple small towns, and by late afternoon, I was in the middle of nowhere somewhere in the Midwest. The sky was already starting to get that weird orange-pink color you get right before dusk, and I needed to stop for gas and some snacks. There was this little convenience store on the side of the highway, nothing fancy, just the usual fluorescent lights and the smell of stale coffee mixed with motor oil. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a rusty pickup and one other car. I pulled in, grabbed my wallet, and went inside. The place was mostly empty except for the cashier, an older guy with a faded baseball cap pulled low, standing behind the counter like he'd been there for 100 years. I picked out a couple of energy bars and a bottle of water, then got in line. The guy ahead of me was muttering to himself, fidgeting like he wasn't quite sure if he wanted to buy whatever was in his hand. When it was finally my turn, the cashier looked up, didn't smile or anything, just scanned my stuff and rang it up. I pulled out cash because, honestly, I hate cards for places like this. I counted my bills, handed them over, and waited for my change. That's when it happened. The cashier slipped something under the pile of coins and bills as he handed it to me. At first, I didn't notice because I was already thinking about getting back on the road. But as I put the money in my pocket and turned to leave, I felt something sharp and thin between my fingers. I pulled it out. It was a small, folded piece of paper. I opened it up, and written in messy, block letters was just one sentence: "Don't go back outside." I blinked and looked back at the counter. The cashier was already looking down at the register, pretending like nothing had happened. I stood there frozen for a second, the paper shaking in my hand. "Ah, thanks," I said, mostly to myself. I left the store and stepped outside, glancing around. The sky had darkened a bit more. The rusty pickup was still there, but the other car was gone. I was about to get in my car when I noticed something odd. Across the parking lot, near the edge of the store's building, someone was standing, a tall guy in a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up. He wasn't moving much, just watching the entrance. I looked back down at the note again, then up at the guy. My heart started to beat a little faster. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe some weird prank, or the cashier was screwing with me for some reason. I got in my car and locked the doors. I kept my eyes on the store as I started the engine. The guy didn't move. I pulled out of the parking lot slowly and headed back to the highway. The whole time, I kept looking in my rearview mirror, but the guy stayed put. By the time I hit the next exit, I called my best friend to tell him what happened. He told me to find a hotel and stay inside for the night. I thought that was a little over the top, but when I got to the hotel, I felt the same uneasy feeling settling in my chest. That night, every noise outside my room, a car door shutting, footsteps in the hallway, the low hum of the air conditioning made me jump. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I checked out as soon as I could. I kept driving until I reached a city where I knew people. I never went back to that store. I never saw the cashier or the guy in the hoodie again. And honestly, I'm not sure what would have happened if I'd stayed outside. I didn't think much of it the first night. I was tired after a long day of driving and pulled into a motel off a highway exit somewhere in West Virginia. The place looked sketchy as hell, old neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark, cracked parking lot, a bunch of empty beer cans scattered near the dumpster. Classic roadside dive motel. I got my room, unloaded my stuff, and went to bed. When I looked out the window to close the curtains, I noticed a car parked across the street. Just a plain, dark sedan, nothing flashy, but it was there, parked with its engine off. I figured maybe some other traveler or the owner of the convenience store down the block. I didn't think anything of it. The next day, I left early and kept driving. I stopped for gas, food, nothing out of the ordinary. When night came, I found another motel, just a little further north, this time in a small town that seemed a little more normal. The kind of place with a decent enough diner and a few chain stores nearby. I pulled into the parking lot, tired again. After checking in and going to my room, I looked out the window and caught my breath for a second. The same damn dark sedan was parked across the street again. It wasn't in the exact same spot, but close. The car's headlights were off, but I could see the silhouette of the driver sitting still behind the wheel. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe some long-haul trucker who liked to park there, or a guy who worked at one of the businesses nearby. That night, I barely slept. The car didn't move, and I found myself watching it through the blinds, my heart racing every time I thought I saw movement inside. The next day, I left even earlier, making good time on the highway. It was colder, and I was more alert, keeping an eye on the road and the rearview mirror. When it got dark, I stopped at a third motel. This one was more rundown than the last two. The neon sign was half lit, and the parking lot had patches of grass growing through the asphalt. After I got my key and went to my room, I checked outside like before. The car was there. Parked across the street, same dark sedan. Only this time, the driver was out. He was standing beside the car, hands in his pockets, looking toward the motel like he was waiting for something. Or someone. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but my skin was crawling. I couldn't sleep at all that night. Every little sound from outside, footsteps, the hum of distant traffic, a dog barking, made me jump. I kept thinking about the guy. I don't know why, but I pulled the curtains back just a crack to look out again. He wasn't there. The car was empty. That's when I saw the shadow move across the parking lot behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the flickering overhead light and a cool breeze through the cracked window. In the morning, I checked out quickly and headed back onto the highway, trying to put as much distance between me and that place as possible. But the whole drive, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, imagining that car behind me. And after that, I swore I'd never stop anywhere at night without checking every window and door, without listening for the faintest noise. That feeling of being watched, of someone waiting just out of sight, I don't want to feel that again. I was with 3 friends, Mike, Sarah, and Jess, driving back home after this long weekend trip. We'd spent the last couple of days camping out near this state park about 5 hours from our town, just messing around and getting away from everything. The kind of trip you don't plan too much, just pack a few things and go. We left early on Sunday morning, hoping to get back by night. We were on this stretch of highway, the kind that's mostly 2 lanes, trees on either side, and not much else. It was late afternoon, and the sun was already dipping low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the road. The sky was starting to turn that weird dull orange, the kind that makes everything look like it's about to get darker faster than it should. Mike was driving. He'd been behind the wheel most of the trip, grinning like he owned the road. Jess was in the front passenger seat, scrolling on her phone, and Sarah and I were in the back, trying to stay awake but mostly just tired from the weekend. About 20 miles outside a town called Fairview, if you can even call it a town, it's more like a few buildings and a gas station, we saw it. A roadblock. At first, it looked normal. Orange cones, flashing lights, and a big reflective stop sign in the middle of the lane. There was a man in a yellow vest standing next to it, waving cars down, directing traffic to the right side where it was all gravel and dirt. Mike slowed the car and stopped. The guy in the vest was a middle-aged man, a bit rough around the edges, with a baseball cap pulled low. He had a serious look but wasn't yelling or anything. Just kind of stared at us as Mike rolled down the window. "Evening," the guy said. "Roads closed up ahead. Construction. Gotta take the detour." Mike nodded and asked, "How long is the detour?" "About 10 miles, the man said, then pointed to the dirt road. "You'll get back on the highway after that." Mike sighed but started turning onto the dirt. The road was rough, filled with ruts and loose stones. The sun was dipping lower, and the trees on either side were turning into long, dark shapes. As we drove, the mood in the car shifted. The detour was slow, and the road felt narrow, like the trees were crowding in on us. Jess put her phone away. Sarah was quiet, staring out the window with this tight expression on her face. I tried to break the silence, but my voice sounded small and weak, even to myself. After about 5 miles, we noticed something strange. The dirt road suddenly got a lot narrower, almost like it was turning into a path. The trees were thicker here, branches scraping the sides of the car. The gravel stopped, and the ground turned into packed dirt with patches of mud. We started to slow down. Then, up ahead, we saw something else. More orange cones. A second roadblock. This one was smaller, just a few cones and a bright flashlight shining in our eyes from behind it. There was a man standing there, this time in a black hoodie and jeans. He wasn't waving us down. He was just standing with his arms crossed, looking straight at us. Mike stopped the car completely. The man didn't say anything, just stared. Mike rolled down the window again. "Hey, is the road closed here too?" No answer. The man just took a step forward, then another, slowly, like he was testing us. Sarah whispered, "That doesn't feel right." Jess pulled out her phone and tried to check the map. No signal. Mike started the car and said, "We should turn around. This doesn't look official." The man suddenly raised his arm and pointed down the path, but it was a strange motion. Like a warning, but also a command. We looked at each other. Something about the whole thing didn't add up. I told Mike, "Just back up. Let's get off this road." He put the car in reverse slowly. The man took a step forward, but we were already moving. As we backed up, the man started walking toward us faster now. His face was hidden in the shadow of his hoodie. Mike floored it and turned the wheel hard, trying to get back to the last main road. Behind us, we heard a shout, low and angry, but we didn't look back. The dirt ticked up behind us, the tires spinning on the loose ground. We made it back to the paved highway and didn't stop until we reached the next town, where we pulled into a gas station. Inside, we told the clerk about the roadblocks. He frowned and said, "There's been no construction on that road for weeks. No detours." Mike asked if there'd been any reports of people blocking the road. The clerk shook his head and said, "Nothing like that. Just some kids from town trying to scare folks, maybe." We all looked at each other and realized how close we'd come to something way worse than a prank. We didn't stay long after that. Got back on the highway and took the fastest route home, all of us too quiet, staring at the windows and watching the road ahead. I still think about that night, how small things built up, the quiet man with no explanation, the weird gestures, the way the trees closed in on us. How easy it would have been to get trapped if we'd stopped. And that's why I never ignore Micah on the road anymore.